watch it later on.
And those
guys
are up on your website, are they?
They are. We've only got the first one up there at the moment, and we've had a number of people that have looked at that, which is great. So really great. If people can't join in on the webinars, then they can actually look later on as well. So good morning to those of you that are joining. Nikki and I are just chatting as people join in, and we're up to about 35 so far, so we know there's a lot more to come on board, so we won't quite start yet, but hope you've been enjoying these webinar series. We've certainly enjoyed presenting them. We're getting some great feedback from you on the content, and great to hear some of you have put into place some of the tips as well. Had somebody the other day tell me that she had already started chunking up her writing, which was fabulous feedback. So just encourage people that are online today, if you want to give us any feedback, please write that into the questions and answers. Tell us what you've been doing, tell us how useful these webinars have been, what you might like to hear in the future. It is our intention to run these webinars continuously for the next 6 months or so at the moment, so love to hear what you the topics that you might want. People are joining in slowly today, Nikki. I see we're up to 42, so we'll give them a few more minutes to join in. It's nothing worse than missing out on the start.
Sure, it's a long weekend factor, I reckon. Like, you know, did you have to get your head around the fact that it's Tuesday today, not Monday?
I did, and I got a bit of a shock when I actually thought, oh, it's the webinar today. Didn't have my computer all set up with my background and things there. So, and the traffic was really bad in Wellington driving into work this morning. I was on the bus, and we just went in at snail's pace. And plus it's raining. I don't think that helps. What's the weather like in Auckland today?
Well, it's gorgeous. We've got beautiful sunshine again. We've had such a nice weekend, and it's very warm and sunny, so yeah, feels like
fabulous
spring. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah. A lot of people are coming and going with these webinars, we've found, so that they're not able to commit to the whole time, so they're joining in at the beginning, and then new ones are coming in halfway through as they get into their lunch break. So we're sitting at about 50 people this morning, so I think let's make a bit of a start. Just for those of you that have just joined us, welcome, and welcome to Nikki Bezant, who's going to be presenting to us today on media. Just a bit of a reminder that the question and answer box at the bottom, if you wave your mouse over the bottom panel, then you can ask questions as we go through. Please take the opportunity to ask any questions you have, even if they're not relevant to today's session, because we'll have a look at them and present the answers to you next week. You might like to add in some comments as well as to how useful the sessions have been. So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, and welcome, Nikki Bezant. We look forward to hearing you this morning.
Kia ora, Alison. Kia ora koutou. It's lovely to be here again. This is number 3 of our seminars. So those of you who have been with us for the ride so far, the 2 previous ones, this seminar is about dealing with the media, and so you're going to hear some echoes from our last two sessions, because the skills translate and things kind of flow on together. So if you haven't been to the last 2, that's fine. You don't need to have been. It's just that there's echoes here, and there are things here that you're gonna recognise from what we've already talked about. So I am talking about dealing with the media, and in this instance I'm talking about mainstream media, so radio, TV, broadcast media, journalists, print journalists, that kind of thing. And we're going to talk next week about social media, which is its own thing, really a different thing. So I'm talking here about really relationships with media practitioners, really, of which I am one, but I'm also called upon to speak in the media quite often too. So, and in fact, just before I came on here, I got a call from a radio station. They want me to talk about something after this. So yeah, this kind of thing is familiar to me. So I'm just going to share some of the things that I've learned over the years that hopefully will help you too. So I'm going to once again share my screen with you, and I'll pop up in the middle. So as I said last week and the week before, all communication is storytelling. So we know that it's just about finding the story for everything, and no more so than in the media really. So whatever we're doing, we just have to think, where's the story? What's the story here? So when we're dealing with the media, they are in the business of content. What they want, what they need is content, and you have got the content. So it's about matching those two things up. I mean, any media outlet these days is doing stuff 24/7 just about. They're putting new stuff up on their website. They're crafting stories for the future. They are in need of content, and there's more competition now. There's fewer outlets, probably the way the media landscape is now, especially since lockdown and since COVID, things have changed a lot. There's more competition than ever probably for those great stories. So they need content, and you've got content, and we're going to figure out how to match those things up. What editors always say is they want news you can use, or producers always say, you know, news you can use, by which they just mean they want something relevant, something topical, that's also got a practical outtake. Like, what can their audience take away from that? What's something, you know, useful? Another thing that they often like is something controversial or something provocative, you know, something that's a little bit, that's going to cause a bit of a reaction. So if you think about the things that get shared on social media, often it's those controversial things or things that are a little bit provocative. And then is always a human interest type of story is going to be popular. So something that's about people, that's about something funny or something heartwarming or something inspiring or something, you know, a little bit different that someone has done, a human being has done. Those kinds of stories are always popular as well. So those are good ways to come at your content. So it's probably unlikely that a media, like a reporter or a journalist, is going to just come across you, find your work and call you up to talk about it with them. You really kind of need to get noticed, and the way to do that is just to put your hand up, to make it known that you are out there, what you're doing, and that you're available to talk about these things. And of course, once you start to get known, then you start to get on lists, on newsroom lists, and they will start to contact you more. But it's just about sometimes just putting your hand up and making it known that you're available. And sometimes that can be putting your hand up to your industry organisation too, which often is getting contacted or is pitching stories to the media. So I heard a story this morning, for example, on RNZ, which was a chef talking about the difficulty of getting staff at the moment because there's fewer overseas people in the country and he's really struggling. So I don't think that story would have come from him contacting RNZ and saying, I'm having trouble getting staff. It might have, but I think it was probably more likely that story came from the Restaurant Association, and that he is a person who they have put up as someone to talk on this topic. So if you've got an industry organisation, which often you will have working in public health, or if you're a dietitian or whatever, you know, put your name forward as someone who is happy to speak in the media, and get on their list, and then they can put you forward as well and recommend you. Obviously, you know, if you're in a large organisation, or if you're in a public health organisation or a university or something like that, you might have a comms person, you might have a communications person who is pitching stories and who is writing press releases. So I'm not going to talk about that too much today, unless someone really wants to, about how to write press releases. We've talked a little bit about writing, but that's a whole separate topic really. So I'm going to talk more about ways to for people who don't have a comms team, for people who don't have a comms person doing their media liaison, how you can get your information out there, how you can get your stories out there. And so, I mean, a direct approach, I'm going here from sort of from easiest to hardest. So a direct approach is always easiest. If you know a journalist or you know a producer of a show and you have got something that you think would be a great story, then contacting that person directly with the idea is like the best hit rate that you're going to get, probably, especially if you've established a relationship with that person or that team, and we'll talk more about that as well. But there are other ways too. Social media is a way to get a story out there or to get yourself noticed. So posting on social media is definitely a way that may get picked up on. It's surprising how often social media threads or things that go a little bit viral on social media, or comments even on social media, get picked up on and taken into mainstream news stories. So don't underestimate the power of social media for that. Particularly, the media is very active on Twitter, which is not somewhere where most Kiwis are active, and we'll talk about that more next week. Fewer people are on Twitter than on other social platforms, but the media often hang out on Twitter. So it can be somewhere where you might want to spend some time if you can be bothered with that, if it suits your other social media objectives. And then another way that you can get yourself noticed, or that you can get your opinions out there, is by writing an opinion piece. If there's something that has happened in the media or in public life and you've got a strong opinion about it, or you've got something to add to the conversation, you can write a short opinion piece. We've talked about writing now, so just write something with your point of view or with your reaction too. So if you see something in the media, if something has happened, and you have got a strong reaction to it, I have got something to say about Judith Collins' comments about obesity, then put that into a short opinion piece and flick that through to someone, to one of the media outlets. The newspaper websites will often take opinion pieces from experts. You don't get paid for that. So that kind of free content is a little bit of a kind of a double-edged sword for me as a person who likes to get paid for writing, but they will take unpaid opinion pieces, and so will websites like Newsroom and the Spin-Off and people like that. So that can be something, and then you'll often find that those opinion pieces get picked up by other media as well. So if you have an opinion piece online on Stuff, say, it wouldn't be uncommon to be contacted by TV or radio to talk about that and talk about that topic more. So that can be quite effective. If you achieve something, if you win an award, or you have a milestone, or you get a I don't know, you get a grant, or something of significance happens, then that can be an in as well. That can be something to tell people about, and to share that with different media outlets can be an in to talking about you and your work. That's not a bad thing to do, and not a bad way to introduce yourself. And then at the harder end of the spectrum, you can have an event, media events, media conferences or a media launch, that kind of thing. I mean, they're not that hard to organise, and you can just invite people along to your place or your organisation and have a couple of speakers and do an event like that. Those kind of events have been thin on the ground this year, especially in Auckland with the way things have been, but they can be quite an effective way of getting your message out there, or getting some coverage at least of what you're doing. So you just really need to be proactive, as we've been saying. It's about pitching, really. It's kind of like a little elevator pitch that you're doing, but you're probably going to do it once you've got those relationships in place with the media, or even if you haven't, you are going to be pitching it to them probably in an email or a text, I would say, or you can do it in a phone call. Phone calls are trickier just because media are busy, and they often just are too busy to talk for a long time on the phone. But really, it's about finding the story for them and then giving them a really simple bullet point summary of what the story is about. So really you can't do a 10-paragraph email. It won't get read. So you need to find the essence of the story. What is it that you want to say, and give it really simple summary bullet points and put that in your email as a pitch. And then, you know, be prepared to follow up. So be prepared to just, if you haven't had any reaction after a day or two, just try again, just resend and say, hey, just following up on this. I wonder if you liked this idea. Be great to know, yes or no. And that is because sometimes if you don't get a response, sometimes it might just be just because the idea doesn't engage them, and you have to kind of be a bit thick-skinned about that and just move on. But if it could also just be that they do get, journalists get a lot of emails and a lot of PR kind of pitches, and so sometimes it might have just got lost down in the email thread and they might have actually liked the idea. So just be prepared to follow up. And also be prepared to act quickly. So if something happens in the media, if Judith Collins says something about obesity, you haven't really got time to have a day of meetings and thinking about what you're going to say about it. You actually have to get on it straight away and get your voice or your opinion or your perspective out there pretty quickly. And then you also have to be quick to be available too. So if your story hits and they say, yeah, oh yeah, we'd love to talk to you about that, then you can't say, oh well, I'm only available tomorrow between 2 and 4. You've actually got to be prepared to be quickly available to do the interview. And the other thing about being proactive is to know who you're dealing with, to do a bit of research on the outlet or the show or the reporter or the paper or the magazine or whatever it is. Kind of understand their audience as much as you can. Have a look at a copy of the magazine. I say this as a former editor who used to be pitched to a lot. You know, pick up a copy of the magazine and look through it and get a sense of the kinds of things they publish and the kind of things they don't. Don't just pitch me a generic idea. Don't pitch the same thing to everyone. It's not gonna hit. You're very unlikely to get a story out of that. So just do a bit of research on the audience of the outlet and the tone that they kind of go for. Is it more of an irreverent kind of a website, or is it a serious news site? That kind of thing. And the kind of content, the kind of stories that they run, and then sort of tailor your pitch if you can to what they're doing. And because our media are all very busy and doing multiple things at once, like we all are, then it's making it easy for them. Just like we do when we write our things we're writing something for our clients, or we're giving advice to our patients or our customers. We need to make it easy for them to do the thing that we want them to do. So, you know, be easy to contact. If you have your contact details easily available, then that is, if they can come to you directly, they will. I mean, probably to the chagrin of comms people, if you've got one, that if they can come to you directly and just call you or text you directly, then they will do that, because it's just much easier for a producer or a reporter to do that. And as I said, be available. You've just got to be able to do the thing that they're asking you to do. And then if you're not available, that's fine too. Just what's always nice is to, if you can't do the thing, or it's not your area of expertise or whatever, it's always nice to be able to say, look, that's not really my thing, or I can't do that, but have you thought of XYZ person? Give them another name. That helps, that makes you a helpful person, and that, you know, that helps them come back to you in the future. So if you're not available, see if you can share the name of someone else who might be available. And then you are going to tell them what to say. Your producer that you're dealing with, usually if it's a news outlet, if it's a journalist who's writing a story, then that's easy. You are going to tell them what to write by what you're saying. But if it's a news show, like a radio show or a TV show, you're probably going to be talking to a producer, and they will be writing the questions that you're going to be asked in the interview for the interviewer. And so basically you can tailor what you want to be asked by giving them some pretty good information about what they should be asking, because you can assume, I mean, it would be lovely if if all of the reporters and all of the producers who phoned you for comments had read your work and read your entire study and knew exactly what you were all about. But you can assume that they have not, unless it's me. I always read your studies, but other people, most journalists don't have time. They will read a summary, or they'll read your pitch, and they won't have time to go into any more depth, and they probably won't have researched you either, unless they know you very well, if you're a well-known person. So you just have to tell them everything they need to know to make a good story. So tell them what to ask you, and then tell them what you're going to say. Give them a pretty good précis of what your answers are going to be. And then they'll be able to put all that in the notes for the presenter or the interviewer, and you'll be away. Giving good sound bites is an art, and it's also a very useful skill. So have a point of view. You know, when you tell them what you're going to say, it's useful if you have a reasonably strong point of view. And again, you're not just engaging with the reporter or the interviewer, you are engaging with their audience, the people who are watching or listening or reading at the other side. So try and think about their audience, who they are, and what are the messages, what are they going to take away from what you're doing, from what you're saying. And that will vary depending on the outlet, you know. So if it's TV1 and One News, then that is, you know, real mainstream. That's my mum and dad watching the news every night and never deviating from TV1. And if it's the spin-off, then that is a completely different audience. That's younger, that's kind of irreverent, that's you can say different things in that interview. So really try and think about the audience and what are they going to actually take out of what you are saying, and then give something very pithy and good as a soundbite for that. So again, now you might remember these kind of pieces of advice because we've talked about them in our writing and our speaking examples. You really want to try and stick to one or two main points. So you know, really, you don't have time to make that many points when you're doing an interview, and they won't all get into the interview anyway, unless it's a live thing, and even then you can't really tell. So keep your messages really simple, one or two main points only, and think about what those are going in, so that you know that what are the things that you really want people to take away, and do that. And again, the everyday language, keep it as simple as possible. Don't use the jargon, don't use the acronyms, because you can assume that no one else will know what you're talking about. Using those examples, using the similes, the same as you would when you are writing, is very useful. And again, with the tone, as we talked about in the speaking session, you know, imagine that you're talking to your neighbour or your mum, and imagine that they don't know anything about what you're talking about, but that they are interested. So just keep it really simple, but don't assume that they know anything at all about your topic. You're the total expert, so you've got to try and translate that message into something that they're going to understand. There's a few things that you can do when you're on air. So if you are doing broadcast media, so if you're doing radio or TV, and this is for if you're doing something live. So I actually prefer live things now because it's just much easier for me. But I can understand that live broadcasting is nerve-wracking and terrifying for a lot of people when you haven't done much of it. So just here are some things that you can think about when you're doing a live thing. Again, the main thing with it is to get your main points in at the top up front, because with a live thing, you can guarantee that what you say is going to be broadcast, but you can't guarantee how long you're going to have to talk about it. You don't really know, and they're not going to tell you, oh, we're going to be talking for 2 minutes and then we're going to have to go to an ad break. If you get 2 minutes, that's amazing, actually, that's quite long. So you really have to get your main point in at the start that you want to be making, and try and keep it positive. I mean, you might be talking about a really serious topic, which is, of course, you know, then you're going to be serious. And there might not be much positive to say, but if there is some positive outtake that people can get from what you're saying, try and get that in, and don't be defensive if you can avoid that when you're being asked tricky questions. It's, again, as per when we talked about speaking questions, it is okay to say that you don't know the answer to that. Look, I'm sorry, that's not something that I'm familiar with, or no, I actually don't know that. I would need to research that and come back to you. That's okay to say. They can't really fault you on that. And then media don't like it when you're too self-promoting. It depends on the outlet a bit, but if you're live, you can be a little bit sneaky and get some mentions in of your organisation or your project, and it's really good to do that. So, you know, you can say things like, well, in our work at the Heart Foundation, we do XYZ, or well, we've found over the years at, you know, Cancer Society, or whatever it is, you can just slip in little mentions and in that way subtly promote your project or your organisation. So that's kind of a good way of slightly subtly promoting. And then if you're doing a pre-record, that is a different thing. So if you're pre-recording for TV or for radio, then again, what's going to happen there is it's going to be edited. So you can assume that maybe if you're talking for 10 minutes, that maybe a minute of it is going to get used. And they will pick out the bits that are the best sound bites, the pithiest, most interesting sound bites. So try and give clean sound bites. They don't want you umming and ahhing and going off on a tangent. That's hard to edit. Try and get it clean, short sentences, slowly speak, and then make those points more than once. So say what you want to say it more than once, and say it in different ways, and try and get the message across in different ways. So they'll pick the one that they like the best, basically. And then if you get caught up, if you get flummoxed, or if you do find yourself going off on a tangent and you're not sure where you're going or whatever, and you just need to stop, that is fine. You can say, look, sorry, I'm not happy with that, can we do that again? And that's actually better than just waffling on and just to fill the space. So they would rather have a clean soundbite that they can easily edit, particularly with TV. So if you need to say it again, just ask to say it again. And then whether it's live or whether it's a pre-record, just keep in mind that when the mic's on, you're on. So if you've got a microphone strapped to you or above your head, or you're in a studio, then just assume that everything that you say is on the record until you are out of that studio or until that microphone is turned off. So don't make the mistake of making an off-the-cuff comment at the start, or anything that you don't want, that you wouldn't want to be public. So just be careful. When the mic's on, you're on. And yeah, smile as per speaking. Just it's nice if you can smile, because it lifts your voice. It makes you seem approachable. It just helps in general. It makes you look friendly. And then when you are particularly doing live things, I know you can be very fixed and think, okay, well, I've got to say this and I've got to say that and I've got to make sure I get my points, and you know, you're nervous for sure, but it's nice to be able to react to what's being said. So just make sure that you listen, because quite often in a live situation, you will be asked about things that aren't necessarily directly related to what you're there to talk about. So if you can just react in a normal way and be yourself a little bit, that is always nice. And just try and get that across. I mean, actually, most media, especially with broadcast, with TV and radio, they like a bit of personality. So it's nice if you can get a bit of yourself in there, and just try and not be so focused on what you've got to say that you're not listening to what's actually being said to you. And so, yeah, it's important that you're recognised for what you're saying. So before the interview, make sure that they know your name, your proper name, how to say it, how to pronounce it, how to spell it. Make sure they caption you properly and they have your correct title. This sounds basic, but you would not believe how many times my name's been spelled wrong and I've been given an inaccurate title. It's just something to really check. And so this afternoon, before I do this thing at 1 o'clock on the radio, I'm going to be emailing saying, can you please call me this? And this is my, just make sure that you refer to me as Nikki Bezant, nutrition writer. I'm no longer editor of Healthy Food Guide, so don't, it's just that kind of thing. You can't assume that they know who you are and what your proper title is. And then make sure that they tag you when they share the story. Make sure they share the story on social media and ask them if they're going to, and then make sure that they tag you and link to you or your organisation in the share. And then you can use your networks, your own social networks, to promote them back. So just make sure that you get that recognition and make sure that it's worthwhile for you. You've got to remember that you are doing them and you're giving them content, and so it's good for them to sort of share the love back the other way as well. And then it's actually really nice to build those relationships and nurture those relationships. So if you've had a good experience and you felt like the interview went well, then it doesn't even matter actually if it went terribly, still the same thing applies. Thank the reporter or thank the producer for the opportunity, and follow them on social media, and just keep in touch with them, keep their details, and then you've got that relationship going forward, so you can contact them again in the future. You can just keep an eye on what they're doing and send them a text every now and then, say, hey, I really liked that story that you wrote about YZ, or I liked your piece on the news about diabetes, or whatever it is. Just keep in touch, and then that opens up the opportunity for you to approach them in the future with other stories. So it's the relationship building is quite an important part of being comfortable and being in the media, really. The other thing is that media people move around a lot. So, the producer on this radio show might end up being a producer on the news, 6 months later. It's on TV. Or they might go, people move around a lot. So if you can, it's quite hard, but try and keep up with where people are, that you've got relationships with, because that can be really useful for you. And, it's good to just be current with who is where. It just makes life easier, so you know where to go with what you've got to say. And just keep tuned in to what's going on in the world, to current events, because you never know when something that comes up in the news or in the media is something that you can talk about, or that there's an opening for you to speak on. So what is the relevant angle for you in this story about XYZ topic? So it's just keeping in tune with what's going on. It's looking outside your own little world, really, not little, but looking outside your world. We're all in these bubbles, we're all in these spheres of, this is the most important thing, but we need to be open and engaged with what's going on in the world too. And then just my last point really is that the media is not...
Nikki, are you able to share your slides, please? I don't think the slides have moved on. Have you got...
Sorry.
Thank you. It's better. Great.
Okay, this is the last kind of main points I want to make. The media is just people. They're not the scary enemy. They're not out to get you. They're not out to trip you up or make your life difficult. They actually are just people like you and me, and their job is to create content. And you have got content to offer, so it can be a totally beneficial, mutually beneficial relationship. And so I would just say, don't be scared. Don't be scared of getting out there and saying what you want to say, because it can be a great thing great skill to have. And also it can be really, really good for the work that you're doing, to shine light on the stuff that's really, really important that you're doing. So I am going to stop there, and hopefully we might have a few questions.
If you could write your questions into the question and answer, then Nikki would be able to answer them. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a kind of it is a daunting thing. When the first media thing that you ever do is a daunting thing, but it's like all of these things that we've talked about. The more you do, I'm sure you find this, Alison, too, the more you do, the more comfortable you are doing it again, So,
and I think every situation is so different depending on the circumstances too. One of the comments that I have, Nikki, is from some of the workplaces that I've worked in. There's been very strict media policies, and it precludes a lot of us from even giving our own opinion. So just a bit of a reminder really to check on your workplace media policy to make sure that you're not saying something that your workplace wouldn't agree with. Even if you're not speaking on behalf of your workplace, you still are associated with that workplace. And so just to check on that, I have always checked out the policies, and often actually you refrain from even giving your own personal opinion because you don't want it to impact on the organisation in any way. Do you have any tips around that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one actually, isn't it? I guess it comes down to being comfortable that your values are aligned with your organisation's values, and then it's not a problem. You know, like with Healthy Food Guide, I never really had a problem because our values were very much aligned. Like my own values and opinions were very much aligned with what Healthy Food Guide's philosophy was all about. So it was easy for me to speak on behalf of, because my own personal stance wasn't any different. But that is hard if they are different, and then I guess, you know, I mean, you would try not to be putting yourself forward in that situation. It's a shame in a way that that organisations are that strict on it, because what it does, I mean, this is a comment about the organisation, you know, the structure really, and the system rather than individual people, but it's more, it allows the non-expert voices to fill the vacuum a bit. You know? So it might be something to address with your organisation. If you're not allowed to speak in the media, maybe it's worth, and you really think that you want to, or you've got something really that you're burning to say that's still aligned with your organisation's values, then maybe it's worth addressing that with your management or whatever, and saying, hey, look, maybe I would like to say something about this, and if we don't speak about it, then, you know, these non-expert voices out there will be speaking about it, and we're losing the opportunity to get those credible messages out there.
Do people still write under fake names? So if they're putting an opinion piece into the media, what are they called? Non de plume or something?
I've never done that. It can be done, and I've seen the odd piece where someone, you know, like a health worker or someone has written something from inside where they don't want to be known, you know, seen or recognised or whatever. I mean, you could. It's a tricky one. It would have to be a very controversial topic. For an editor to accept it, would have to be a very controversial topic where the consequences of that person being known would be severe or dismissal or whatever. So that would be the only way that an editor would accept that, I think. You can't really just do that for general stuff, I think.
So there's a question here that says, what about when you're dealing with a reporter that has a particular bias against what the organisation stands for? For example, a reporter advocating for individual rights when we're trying to advocate for environmental changes. And I guess we see that with smoke-free places. We've also seen that recently with the stand on individual obesity, individual responsibility versus the environment. So what's your comment on that, Nikki?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you don't want to antagonise your interviewer, but then if they're going to be coming at you with a kind of a contrarian point of view straight away, then I think you just have to go back to the evidence. And what you have on your side in all of those arguments is you have the weight of evidence. So you can just keep saying that, you know, you can actually be strong in saying, well, I know a lot of people think that, but in fact, the evidence does not support that view. You know, you can say things like that and really keep it coming back to what is actually the evidence. I think that's the only thing you can do there, really, and that is, you know, what you can do on your side. And it's true of the COVID debate. You know, all the things. It's not a debate. It's not a debate. Climate change is not a debate, but the people who frame it as a debate, for those people, you just do need to come back to what is actually real and what we know for sure and what's been proven. Yeah, it's all that you can do.
Jenny says that it's sometimes scary to put your hand up, especially if you're representing a certain organisation or industry, or perhaps if you're representing a dietitian's group. And she recommends that it's a case of practicing putting yourself out there and having others read over what you've written before presenting it. So great tip, Jenny. Thank you. Any comment there?
Oh, just again, what I said earlier is just practice. Practice is great. Yeah. So even if you're, I don't know, if you were really worried about an interview or something, you could always role play it with someone, like they do with the presidential debates. Have someone else be the reporter and ask you the questions, and just practice.
Yes, and even if you get out your phone and record yourself answering it, and then play it back, and think, oh, I better not do that in the real interview. There's another question here that is talking about the question says that somebody asks for a quote, but how do you know what they're going to do with your quote when you're not in control and you don't have the context necessarily of what the article is about?
Yeah, you don't know what they're going to do with your quote, and you can't really, there's nothing that you can do in that situation except give them a really good quote, and don't make any room for ambiguity in what you're saying in your quote. You can't, most journalists will not let you read their story before they publish it. It's not practice. I will, however, check that I have got the quotes accurate. So I will, if someone asks me, I will send them, here's your quotes that I'm going to use, and just to make sure that they're accurate, and that is perfectly fine to ask for. So if you are worried about that, you could just say, listen, I know you won't show me your whole story, but could I just see what you're using with me to make sure that they're accurate, and you either get a yes or a no there, but that's perfectly fine to ask for, I think. But yeah, when you're doing a print piece, you assume again what I said about doing a pre-record. You don't know what they're going to use of you. You can assume it won't be everything that you say. So just you kind of have to just go with it and assume that you're going to be, hopefully use the thing you want them to use, but don't try and make it straightforward for them. So don't say too much.
And sometimes it just keeps on coming back and back and back. I remember when one of my children was a baby, and I was doing some voluntary work for Plunket, and we were at Parliament, and I must have said something, and 25 years later somebody sent me a clip the other day of something that I had said 25 years ago. How do you even stop that from happening?
You can't stop it. Once it's out there in the world, it's out there.
Yeah.
You just, you have to be prepared for it to come back someday. That's why you've got to be a bit careful.
Yeah, and so are there any other questions anybody would like to ask? Please type them into the bottom of the question and answer page. Maybe you have some comments. Perhaps you have some questions about the next session, which is social media. If you've got any questions about what you'd like us to cover next time. Perhaps you also might have a comment about how useful these webinars have been. We'd love to hear your views. Is Tuesday a good day? Do you like coming at lunchtime? Maybe we'll do a poll next time and ask you some of those things. Nikki, I can see that our numbers are starting to drop off. I think we've come to the end of our questions for today. So thank you so much for sharing your tips on media, and a challenge for those of us that are working in public health nutrition to really think about how we might be able to step up this week and have our say. Thank you very much. Ka kite anō.